Hey everyone, and welcome back. Coming up this week, we take a look at the latest releases from Anthropic, plus a controversial new startup that is designed to measure engineering productivity, and how vibe coding is transforming product development as we know it, even if it is a little bit cringe. As always, if you enjoy the briefing, hit the subscribe and the like button. But before all that, after rumors of its existence just a few weeks ago, AI mode is officially coming to Google search. Google says that the AI mode is particularly helpful for questions that need further exploration, and in the preview, it looks as though users can ask an initial question and then follow it up with further questions, with traditional search results then appearing in a side panel that can be expanded. So in this sense, it looks a little bit like Perplexity, Grok, and other AI assistants that integrate live search. So when I first heard about this, I assumed that AI mode would be a toggle that you could switch on and off. But from the UI that's been released, it appears that AI mode takes the first slot in the navigation, with all appearing second. So if this were to be replicated outside of this experiment, it would mark a significant shift in how search as we know it works, with potentially catastrophic consequences for any products that rely on SEO. We'll take a look at some SEO figures later in the briefing as well. Also this week, Google confirmed that Gemini's live mode will soon get live video and screen sharing capabilities that will make it possible to co-browse websites together. So if you could imagine, some of the use cases that are shared from Google include the ability to navigate e-commerce websites and co-browse those sites together. Now, I'm not sure if this use case is something that users want, but if it does have some utility, so if it improves the experience somehow by giving you suggestions on other places you can find items that you're looking for or deals that are currently running that you might not be aware of, then I can imagine that this type of co-browsing could become more popular, especially if users develop closer relationships with their AI assistants. Also this week, Anthropic has launched a new version of its prompt console. So this is designed to be used by product managers, QAs, and anyone else who's not an engineer. And this new prompt console is designed to work as an integrated place where all team members can work on prompts together for new AI features, refine them, and then share them with colleagues. So if you can imagine, let's say, for example, you're building a new AI chatbot and you want a place where you can test out how the bot responds to, say, the top 50 questions that are asked by users. Using this space, you can test those prompts and API integrations all in one place. And also this week, Anthropic's Chief Product Officer shared his views on where the future of product development is heading. So some of the predictions that he made in this interview on 20VC included his prediction that models will differentiate rather than converge. So foundational models will develop increasingly distinctive characteristics and specialities rather than becoming interchangeable commodities. He also says that software development will transform fundamentally and that developers will shift from writing code to becoming delegators who manage systems, focusing on high-level direction and reviews. Plus, product development will require new approaches. And continuing this theme of the transformative effect of AI on product development, Gary Tan, who's one of the leaders of the startup incubator Y Combinator, says that for 25% of the winter 2025 batch, 95% of lines of code are LLM generated. So he says that this is not a typo and that the age of vibe coding is here. Now, you've probably heard the phrase vibe coding over the past couple of weeks. And if you're interested in learning more about vibe coding, over on Substack this week, I take a deep dive into what vibe coding is and how you might be able to get started. So in this knowledge series, I look at the different tools that you can use to get started, including things like V0, Replit, Lovable, and Cursor, along with some analysis on whether they're best for product managers, designers, or engineers. And then I dig into several examples of how you might be able to use vibe coding to do things like build prototypes, landing pages, and create components for a SaaS product. So if you're interested in learning more about this phrase, which is a little bit cringe, then head over to Substack this week. Meanwhile, OpenAI is making headlines this week after reports suggested that their upcoming AI agents are reportedly set to cost a whopping $20,000 a month. So according to this article in The Information, a high-income knowledge worker could cost $2,000 a month, with a software development agent set to cost $10,000 a month, and a PhD-level researcher priced at $20,000 a month. So if one developer agent can do the work of, let's say, 5 developers, then I can understand how OpenAI may be able to anchor its pricing around that as a way to sell it to corporates. But $20,000 a month for a PhD level researcher seems pretty absurd when researchers aren't really paid that much. So maybe they're offering that as a decoy to make the $10,000 option look pretty cheap. And after a mixed reaction, shall we say, to its initial offering of Apple Intelligence, which I have firmly switched off because I just can't bear to use it. Apple has said that the next AI conversational version of Siri has reportedly been delayed and is now scheduled for release in 2027. So in my view, if that's how long this takes to get it right, then they're better off waiting until then rather than rush releasing something, which in my view is what Apple Intelligence is. It's an attempt to release something to appease investors and users, which ultimately ends up not doing anyone any favors. So in my view, they're better off taking a step back and figuring out how they might be able to redesign iOS to integrate Apple Intelligence and Siri correctly. Now let's take a look at some tools you can use this week. And first up is something called Crosshatch. So this is something that I've not seen before. Maybe you guys have seen something like this. Let me know in the comments. But this basically allows product teams to turn on what Crosshatch is calling hyper-personalization in your app. So with Crosshatch, users are empowered to share their preferences, and then product teams can develop a personalized experience based on the preferences that have been shared by the user. So a user, for example, might say, okay, I'm happy to share my recent purchases from my bank. I'm happy to share where I've been on Google Maps or on Instagram and where I've booked restaurants on OpenTable, for example. And then that information can be used to craft more personalized experiences inside a product. And I just thought this was a really neat idea and something that I've not really seen much of. There's plenty of research that shows that personalization can improve conversion rates and stickiness, but I've not seen it positioned in this way where users are at the center of personalization preferences. So if you're considering adapting your product to make it more personal, but you're concerned about the potential privacy implications, then Crosshatch could be something worth checking out. Next is an AI spreadsheet. And if you've used Google Sheets or Microsoft's Copilot in Excel, then you probably agree that the results are pretty underwhelming. Quadratic is an AI spreadsheet with code and connections. And what this allows you to do is not only use AI to analyze data, but you can also use it to generate the data in the first place. So it's one spreadsheet, which allows you to create tables of information and transform it into a number of different visualizations. It also connects directly to your database, which means that you can conduct SQL queries without actually writing any SQL, and then transform that into dashboards and reports, which can be shared internally. So if you're somebody who loves to work with data, but you're looking for something that's a bit more intuitive and frankly a bit more polished than what's currently on offer by Microsoft and Google, then Quadratic is worth checking out. And finally, this one is a little bit controversial. It's called Prism, and this is designed to give you a clearer lens on your developer performance. So what this does is it measures your engineer's output by looking at things like deployment, cycle time, time to merge, number of pull requests, and so on. And then it provides you with a report to benchmark that against other types of products in your industry. Now, this is a little bit controversial because you can't really measure productivity by the number of pull requests or indeed by the number of deployments in many ways. But nevertheless, I think it's still quite an interesting idea. And if nothing else, it's quite handy just to see how other companies are performing. So if velocity is something that you're looking to measure and you're a little bit nosy and you want to see how other companies are performing, then check out Prism for more information on industry benchmarks. Now let's take a look at some data this week. So first up, this week saw the release of the annual push notifications benchmarks report from Airship. And as you can see from this graph, Android users are still more likely to have push notifications switched on. So benchmarks are reported in high, medium, or low percentiles, which represent the 90th, 50th, and 10th percentiles for all apps and verticals. And as you can see, across the high percentile, 78.1% of Android users put push notifications on versus just 74% for iOS users. And you'd also see that Android has taken a 10% hit year on year. And that's because of the release of new privacy features, which now require developers to ask permission from users before they receive notifications. This report is full of lots of other nuggets as well. So for example, it tells us that the average number of push notifications received per user is now up from 150 to 160 for iOS users, and that media apps send the most notifications with an average of 294 notifications per month. So if you're currently working on mobile apps and you're wondering how to structure your notification strategy, then this report is useful for additional contextual information. Also, last week, Stripe published its annual letter, which is always worth a read. And in it, they confirmed that Stripe is now powering the AI boom and that 100 AI startups are achieving annualized revenues of $5 million in just 24 months in 2024 versus the 37 months it took the top 100 SaaS companies to achieve the same figure in 2018. So this is a trend that we see everywhere at the moment, which is that AI startups are achieving annualized revenue rates at a much faster pace than we've previously seen across other sectors. Other stats from the letter worth knowing include the fact that stablecoin transactions have more than doubled from Q4 2023 to Q4 2024, with 40 million monthly active stablecoin wallets, and 99% of stablecoin balances are USD. The letter also mentions that more than 700 AI agent startups have launched in 2024, with expectations that this number will be significantly surpassed in 2025. No surprise there. And if you're launching an AI assistant or AI agent, then head over to Substack for the second piece this week, which is a deep dive on how top companies are building AI assistants. So in this analysis, I take a look at how 20 different companies, including the likes of Lyft, Adobe, Amazon, DeepSeek, Brave, and Uber and more, are approaching the design of their AI assistants. So if you're developing an AI assistant or an AI agent at the moment, take a look at that over on Substack as well. Other stats this week: after topping the charts following its release, Grok has now dropped to a still respectable number 6 in the iPhone app charts, but ChatGPT has returned to the top spot. And according to a new report on generative AI apps, it has now recorded over 400 million monthly active users for the first time. So it's going to be really difficult for any new entrant to the market to displace ChatGPT because it has got such a head start, both from a branding perspective and from an engaged user's perspective as well. So Grok made lots of headlines alongside DeepSeek, but it hasn't found the staying power to stay relevant, although you could argue that number 13 in the iPhone App Store charts is still pretty good. And finally, I leave you with some stats that relate to our headline on Google AI Overviews, which is that zero-click searches are on the rise. So SEO is officially dying, according to this new report from Bain Consulting. So this report's found that 80% of users now rely on AI summaries at least 40% of the time. So it looks like we're finally starting to see some real-world data on this after predictions that AI overviews would kill SEO. Some of the suggested actions from the report to prepare for this zero-click world include optimizing for AI crawlability and diversifying your content formats. But with Google releasing its AI mode in test this week, it looks like zero-click searches are only set to accelerate from here. And that's it from me this week. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your week. Thanks very much for listening and watching. I'll be back next week.